Welcome back to Recovery Demystified. This is Recovery for the Rest of Us. I'll be your host, Early. I'm so happy to have y'all here today. Today I got to talk to my friend Clay, who I met at a Smart Recovery meeting. He had this really bright personality and kind of shone above the crowd. You could see that his recovery has given him so much confidence and excitement. And it was really interesting to hear his story and see his entire journey, all of the traumas he experienced throughout childhood, the struggles, the depth of his suffering that he overcame. And there are a couple of things that really stuck out to me in his interview that I wanted to touch on. One is something frustrates the living shit out of me. He talked about how in treatment centers, they do this thing all the time where they're like, look to your left, look to your right. So some tiny percentage of you are going to recover and all the rest of you are going to relapse. And that shit grinds my gears so hard. I'm like, why would you set people up for failure like that? Luckily for Clay, his experience when someone told him that, where he was like, no, I'm going to be the exception. I'm going to be the one that recovers and does well for myself. So I'm so glad that it hit him like that. Because I think for most other people, they're just like, well, fuck, that's not helpful. You're telling all of us we're going to fail. So anyway, that kind of stuck out to me. And I wanted to remind everyone that the scientific data shows that 75% of people recover. 75%. And I will link the study in the show notes so you can see where it came from. I personally think 100% of people have the ability to recover if they are given the right tools and resources that they need for themselves. But currently, in the current world we live in, 75% of people recover, which means that you are highly likely to recover. The ball is in your court and you got this. A couple of other things that I thought were really interesting in his episode was he talks about relationships with men and being vulnerable with your emotions and how being guarded with your emotions is a part of what's killing us. And I'm like, pull up a chair, preach. The concept that emotions are bad or that we should need to suppress them at all costs or that having emotions makes us weak or something is straight up bullshit. And for some reason, it is so common to teach boys and men that having emotions is bad. And I fucking hate that because emotions are messengers. They are important. They are our body and mind's unique inner wisdom, letting us know that our needs are not currently being met. And sometimes it's uncomfortable and we maybe don't want to be experiencing that at that moment, but it's part of life and there's healthy ways to deal with it. And I love that he touched on that in this episode. It is so important for everyone, but especially men who are taught that they're not supposed to have emotions. It can enrich and make our lives so much more beautiful and whole and tolerable and hopeful if we're able to learn how to tolerate and process our emotions in a healthy way instead of just pretending like they're bad and we don't want them to exist. So I'm really glad that he touches on that. Yeah, it was a really nice conversation. It's it just goes to show that don't judge a book by its cover and you can't tell by looking at someone what they've been through. And the fucking resilience of the human spirit is so intense, and I am so proud of Clay for all of the recovery work that he's done and where he's at today. Kudos to you, brother. And without further ado, here's my interview with Clay. Hello, Clay. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you, Early?
I'm doing good. Will you start by introducing yourself to the audience? Let them know your pronouns and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Clay. I'm a he, him. I'm from Fayetteville, not born, but raised in the area. I've been a little bit all over, but mainly from Fayetteville. I would say that I'm a pretty upbeat person. I'm a pretty down-to-earth guy, and also just I would say that's kind of been the theme, is that I've just always been a sweet but hesitant and a little anxious guy. So
yeah, the first time I met you was at a Smart Recovery meeting, and you definitely had a big personality that stood out above the crowd. So I could definitely see that in you. So we're here today to talk about your story with addiction and recovery. So I'm curious, what was it like for you being a kid? What were some of your first sort of contacts with substances? When did it get bad? And how did you get into recovery?
So I come from a family of alcoholics and addicts. Both my parents and my sister as well are all suffer from one affliction or the other. And luckily, my sister's sober now, and my mom's sober, and I'm sober, obviously. But the alcohol and addiction, my mom was sober when I was young, but my dad was not sober. And my dad suffered from not just alcoholism, but he was also a crack and heroin addict. Mm-hmm. But he was also a PhD.
Oh, my goodness.
In social work, and he taught at the university, and he was also a really intelligent guy, but he was also a leading expert in addiction science, ironically enough.
And this was all simultaneously, like he was in active addiction and also successful in his work?
Some of the time he was successful, but he might take a project like at a university, and my whole life he was just going from a director position to a university as an adjunct professor or a research position, and he was always trying to keep up with his, trying to be that guy, but he also had this other life that was just kind of like that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Mm-hmm. So he was in and out of prison as well. And so with my growing up, I didn't see him a whole lot. My parents split up when I was really young, and unfortunately, my dad was abusive towards my mom and emotionally abusive towards me and my sister. Yeah. And so there was a lot of turmoil in the house. And we also saw a lot of, when he was sober, he was great. He was a great dad. I had a great mom, but when he was using, he was a monster, and I can't describe the types of fear he would put into my mom to where that kind of transferred to us. So we absorbed a lot of that. I could feel it when the vibes were not right, kind of, so to speak.
Was this for what ages were you when life was like this?
So I would say it was most impactful from probably 2 to 6. And then we moved to California because he had just gotten so violent. There were some issues with, some custodial kidnapping and parental kidnapping from him. And so we moved to California. Mm-hmm. And my mom took a job there when I was young. And so that's the other kind of thing, is that we moved around a lot for my mom's career. My mom's also a social worker and therapist, and ironically enough, she deals a lot with survivors of trauma and sexual abuse and stuff like that. And so we're running from my dad, and I remember specifically one really important memory was on Christmas Eve when I was maybe 4 or 5. I was in a battered women's shelter with my mom, and just being not understanding why we couldn't go home. But that was just, it became a normal thing. We had a guy that would come live with us that had a gun because it was dangerous to be home alone. My mom was a single mom, and she just had 2 little kids she was trying to take care of. And so we ended up moving to California, and we started settling down there. Just going from place to place until we could find a house. And so had that, that almost like that military kid, military brat style of living where you're just moving all over the place. And so I didn't really get to feel like home anywhere. And that was another common theme, was that I don't know. I just don't think it's normal for kids never to feel home. Yeah,
and it's as soon as you start maybe making friends or feeling comfortable somewhere, you get uprooted again, and that's really dysregulating when you're a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that was another big thing, is and so I suffer. I don't know. I don't suffer anymore. I'm proud of it, but so I'm on the upper side of neurodivergent, and so I was in not special education, but in resource classes and stuff like that. And I was going to a bunch of special classes. So I always felt apart from the other students, even when I was in the same school. Like, I just felt weird. I didn't feel like I fit in. I was really easily overstimulated. And so I was able to leave the room and stuff. And I just always felt really uncomfortable with that. The fact that I was treated different, like that I had a laptop in grade school and just stuff that was not normal. And I also came from not super wealth, but just comfortable family. And so like a lot of my friends did not have money. And so the ones that didn't, I just couldn't relate to a lot of kids. And that became a common theme as well. And so I felt apart from everybody. I was afraid of everything. And I just didn't know how to blend in. Like, I could not be one of the other kids. Like, I was not good at sports. I didn't feel like I was cool enough. So I would try to like chameleon into these different groups starting out. And like, I was good at baseball. I hated baseball. Mm-hmm. I was good at hockey. I hated hockey. But I would do these things that my mom would put me in, and I would get friends here and there. And then I'd move on to the next thing. Or when I got into upper elementary school, into junior high, I started going to different private schools because I was having issues at school, being picked on and not being able to, I was not meeting my goals in school, and I wasn't thriving.
Yeah. I mean, when you feel like you're other like that, it can have sort of a domino effect on your well-being, and the feeling of being excluded as a kid is just, it's outstandingly painful. So I'm so sorry you went through that. As time went on and you grew up and you're moving around a bunch with your mother and your sister, at what point did you have your first encounters with substances?
So that's another great question. So we moved back to Arkansas when I was probably, 13 or 14. And I had my first encounter with substance. It was in a potato or an apple, one of the two. I can't remember for sure, but we smoked like ditchweed. Mm-hmm. And we were using either an apple or a potato in like this little like culvert behind the houses. And I thought it was so cool. And I didn't feel a thing. Of course, I acted like I did, but that was not my first experience. But I did it, like always saying, like I was always one of those people that had seen how bad it affected my life as far as my parents go and everything. But when it came to peer pressure, like I always thought that was so funny, like the idea that people were going to, but it was so real. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to fit in so bad. And the fact that they thought I was cool enough to do it, hell yeah, I'm going to do it. And so I did that. Didn't really get anything from it.
But at the time you had both like opposing thoughts, like I've seen this pain in my family, but I also desperately want to fit in.
Yeah, and fitting in seemed like a way better deal at the time, and it always has. Mm-hmm. I had fought so my whole life to want to be a part of like that. I didn't know that's what I wanted. Hindsight, that's kind of what I wanted was connection, but so every time I had the opportunity to do something to fit in, I would do that. But I do remember specifically the first time I drank mm-hmm. and the first time I used other substances. But so the first time I drank, I was like 17, and it was off Mike's Hard Lemonade and Smirnoff Ice, and it tasted like candy and Jaeger too. And it was so nasty tasting, but like I just remember when I started to feel buzzed. And then I was like, okay, I just want to feel like this forever. And I woke up and threw up in the middle of the night. I went to my dad's room, and I was staying with my dad at the time. I was having issues with my mom and had gotten married to a guy, and we didn't get along. So I would just go back and forth between my mom's house and my dad's house. Mm-hmm. And so my dad and I were having a good relationship at this point. He was sober. But he had woken up in the middle of the night and was like, like, "You've been drinking?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Well, you smell like a liquor store. So there's something wrong if you're not drinking." And I was like, "Whatever, man." And I remember I didn't do it for a while, but I just remember how good that felt. And like how that was the missing puzzle piece. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm not going to search it out yet, but I am going to do this every opportunity I have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then probably like 2 months later, I was having a toothache at school, and I called my dentist, and he said, "I can fit you in. Just come in." And he wrote me a prescription when I went in that day, and it was for hydrocodone. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Just take one." And I was like, "All right." And it says on that bottle, take one every 4 to 6 hours. And I was like, okay, I can do that. I didn't know how addictive these things were.
And you were how old at the time?
I was like 16 or 17.
Yeah.
And so was I in enough pain to need these? Probably not. But that's not to say that it's the doctor's fault. Like, I think there's a part of that, but there's also the part where, he thought I was in genuine pain, which I was, but who knows? That's all subjective, just like fear.
And there was that like special time in history where doctors were just handing out scripts for opioids like it's nobody's business, even to kids, for goodness sake.
And that's exactly what it was. And so I was like, all right, I'll take one of these. Mm-hmm. And then one of my friends was like, take 2 of those. And I was like, okay. And I don't remember how I felt then, but I remember that I was so chatty from how I felt that I got kicked out into the hallway for the rest of the school year that day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And that I just remember I didn't know what had caused me to feel that good. I didn't, because I still wasn't cognizant of that. But I just remember feeling euphoric and feeling the happiest I'd ever felt, and real itchy and sweaty. Mm-hmm. And then one of my buddies was like, "Yeah, that's the hydrocodone."
Because you took 2.
Yeah, because and so from the jump, I knew that would be a problem.
Yeah,
and it didn't take long for that to take off. Like, I started, I was a senior at this, or as a junior at this point. But that summer, I started drinking every opportunity I got, and that was and I was blacking out, just about every time.
So you pretty immediately were binge drinking?
Yeah. So I just had access to it. My parents were not okay with me drinking. Both my parents were sober at the time, and through different fellowships. But I would go to my friends' houses, and they would let us, like, smoke weed and drink. So I started doing all that. And then, my senior year, I started drinking to the point where I was, coming into school and drinking. And I barely skated through high school. Like, I went from having like dreams and aspirations to just my only aspiration was I just got to get out of here. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have really any goals. I'd lost like all idea of what I wanted to do.
And do you think that had to do with drinking, or what do you think that change came from?
I think that had to do with fear. Like, I just think that the fear of, maybe if the idea of change of anything, even though it's good change, like, I think that's one of those fear things. So as long as I just blot it out, it's not something we have to address right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. And
so that was something, like, even through school, like, it was just not something I was aware I was doing. Like, fear was a constant theme for me. And I was constantly doing, even before I used and drank, I was doing things to drown out my fear. Like, I slept with the light on until I was like almost 16 or 17. Like, there was so much trauma and all these repressed memories and things, like these really awful things going on up in my head, mm-hmm. that I didn't really know. I was so ashamed because I'm a boy. I should not be afraid of everything. Mm-hmm. And so that was something that I learned that was, definitely conditioned behavior from, not from my parents, because my parents, like I said, are both therapists, and There was always this open line of communication. It was always known that I could go to them, even if it were about sex, whatever it was about. Like if I'd gotten a girl pregnant, murdered somebody, they're going to help me find somewhere to bury the body, you know? They're just they were those types of people. Really supportive parents when they were doing well. But I was just afraid, like a child, like that had seen a scary movie. I was afraid of everything.
Do you feel like that fear came from those early childhood experiences of having to be taken away from your dad and moving around a bunch?
Yes, I think a lot of it came from those. And then there's certain events that happened. Like there's another really specific event, and I don't share about it too much, but it's important. But when I was really young, I woke up in the middle of the night and the police were all in the house. And my mom was panicking because somebody had come in. And remind you, this is just a single mom with 2 kids, young kids, like 4 and 2, I think, or maybe 5 and 3. But somebody had come in the middle of the night while we were all sleeping and turned all the sinks on in the house.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So those kinds of things happened regularly. And she thought they were my dad, but we really don't know. It's just one of those things that I've always just assumed was my dad, but I don't know for sure. But I had these events, and then waking up and seeing a guy that I don't know sleeping on the couch with a gun to make sure that we're like, that's just not normal.
Yeah. So it makes sense to me that you were afraid.
Yeah. I had no sense of security. Yeah. Like I never felt tied down, and I never felt like I was secure. And, even in my own self, like there's just I cannot keep myself safe. Nobody else could keep me safe. So that I tried to just escape away from that fear, by either avoiding it, screwing my way out of it, whatever I was doing, being a class clown, just whatever, playing music. I was doing something to not think about those things. If it was watching a movie, playing video games late into the night, playing with Lego, it didn't matter. Drawing, I was just doing something to blot out that fear. And then I never thought I would be able to move out of my parents' house because I was just that afraid to be on my own. Like I could not stay the night alone. I didn't like being in the dark alone. I was so afraid of everything. And then I was like 18, and the more and more I drank, the more confident I got. Mm-hmm. I had this false sense of bravado. And so I moved out and started drinking more and more. I was drinking almost every day at that point. I would have like a water bottle filled with vodka, or whatever else I could get. I really didn't care. I would drink beer, vodka all day. Didn't work. And then I found opioids again, around, so probably 19 or 20. And I found opioids. I got, a friend gave me some like hydrocodone or something along those lines. And so I started taking those more regularly on the weekends and such. And then I started working at a hospital, and I learned that, that I could probably maintain, and I learned some tricks to getting opioids, but with, being deceitful, lying to doctors, buying them off the street. And so I started doing that. I would buy them where I could, but they were so expensive that and there's not a real big heroin thing around here. So it was like prescription pills were the only way that I could do that. I would go to Collier's because they used to have over-the-counter codeine. And I would use like that Kratom stuff from head shops, and a lot of it, to the point where it would make me throw up. But I just didn't care. Like I would spend every penny that I had and then some to support that because it made me feel comfortable.
Yeah. Did using continue to suppress that fear?
Yeah, for a while.
Yeah. It
definitely did. It started suppressing that fear until it didn't, which is the best way that I can say. I would say maybe, so I'd worked at this hospital for a while, and my using had progressed to where I was using daily and a lot. I was using OxyContin, and I was using it in every way I could get it, up the nose and the vein, popping them. And I remember coming off of it for the first time and shitting myself and puking and just having a demoralizing experience.
Being dope sick.
Yeah. And I didn't know that's what it was. I was like, oh my God, I'm dying. I must have cancer or something like that. I'm really sick now. I had no idea. Like, even though I had this knowledge of drug addiction and everything from my family, I didn't know that I was dope sick.
Did you have any external consequences at the time? Like, were they onto you at work or anything?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, at work, I got, it's really funny. It's not funny, but it's ironic that, so they'd come up to me at work and the police were there and they were like, so we have two ways to go about this. You can either go into the bathroom and take a drug test, or the police are going to go in your locker with you, search your locker, and you can go about it that way.
Oh my goodness.
And so I was like, all right. And they're like, somebody says they saw you like nodding off and powder under your nose, which I was not snorting anything at that time.
But perhaps you were nodding out.
Yeah, that could have definitely been a thing. But I was just like, all right, whatever. But I was like, I was just stuck on that idea that I was like, I didn't snort anything. But like, I just didn't even realize that they're just trying to, cover themselves. And I'm just like so over here and like, who the hell do they think they are? Like, that they're so wrong. But like, I was just in that neurotic sense of self. And so I got suspended.
Wait, what did you pick though? The locker or the
No, I took
test?
the drug test.
Yeah.
And I passed.
Like a false negative?
No, like, so just nothing came up. And so something should have come up. I thought for sure I was getting fired. I had prescriptions for a lot of stuff I was doing. I just wasn't doing it the way that they wanted me to do it.
Right.
So, but I was like, I was just going to use that as my fight, but it didn't even become an issue. And so I really escaped that one. But about 6 months later, I got caught up again for nodding off. And I'd lost like 100 pounds. I was looking like shit. I called into work like probably 50-something days over the year.
Wow. So after that, the first time, the scare where you didn't get caught, did you have like a realization or anything, or do you just continue on sort of?
No, I was like, I had a false sense of confidence. I was like, I have them tricked. Like now, like not realizing that they probably know that and that they're not trying to be my enemy. They were trying to be supportive. But I just was, because I had been to detox a couple times, like just detox and to no success. Like it just I wasn't doing anything after detox. Like I might do detox and then like a little Suboxone or something. And I never was getting on the path of like actual recovery.
Right.
I was just trying to get people off my back, really, and trying to get back to where I wasn't going to throw up so I could go to work. And then around January, so the following year, so that first event had happened in September, so 3 months, not 6 months. I get called into the office again, and they're like, so you can take a drug test, but we're going to fire you regardless.
Oh my goodness.
And they're like, we think you have a problem, and we think you're going to die if you don't get help.
Wow.
They're like, you're not yourself. Like I was doing a lot of risky shit. I was not coming into work. Like I had nothing. Like I'd gone from being this guy that everybody loved to nobody could stand to be around, which is polar opposites.
How did it feel when they brought you in the office for that?
It was humiliating, but it also, I just wanted to fight and be like, just not fight physically, but just fight for myself and be like, but I was so defeated at that point. But I was like, okay. And I did go to treatment. I overdosed about a week later, and I went to treatment and nothing happened. Like I didn't get better. I just went to treatment.
How long were you in treatment for?
I was in treatment for about 6 months, but I was not there to really get sober. I was there because my dad was working at this treatment center, and my parents were worried about me. My sister was worried about me, and my sister is my biggest supporter to this day. She's my biggest fan. And so I just really didn't want to die and be a forgotten story.
Yeah. Had the drugs turned on you at that point, or were they still supporting you? Did you feel like you needed recovery?
No, I felt like they were working, but I just couldn't. I didn't have a job anymore, and I was not motivated. I was so depressed, not knowing I just wasn't motivated to do what it took to stay using without a job. Mm-hmm. And so I couldn't afford my habit. And so I was like, I got to do something. So I did go to treatment. And when I say I went to about 60 days of residential in a Arkansas Department of Corrections facility, not a great facility. Just like a state-funded, really crappy facility. But you can get sober wherever you want to get sober.
Yeah, and sometimes just being locked in a box will do it.
And so I went down there, and I did not want to be sober. I did get, abstinent sober, but I just wasn't ready. And so a few months later, my mom had moved to Hawaii in this time, by the way. And so she was like, why don't you come out to Hawaii? And I didn't know she had started drinking again. Mm-hmm. So I go out to Hawaii, and my stepdad does not know I'm coming out there, and I don't know he doesn't know.
Uh-oh.
So I have nowhere to stay.
Oh.
So I end up homeless in Hawaii for 6 months, and I am just depressed. And so I am getting my ass kicked, just emotionally left and right. And quite literally, the Hawaiians didn't really like me either. And I didn't like myself. I was living in this house squatting, and I was not living up to my best potential, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I decided...
Were you drinking or using at that time? Or?
Yeah. I started using as soon as I got out to Hawaii. I was using whenever I could use, and I would drink whenever I could drink, whatever I could use, and whatever I could drink. Mm-hmm. Anything to make me feel better. And so... around Christmas, my stepdad and my stepdad was like, I'll fly you back to Arkansas. My dad was like, I can get you into another treatment facility in Little Rock if you'll go. And I was like, oh no. Now I'm not quite ready for that. And then I came back to Arkansas. My mom gave me $1,000 for Christmas, so I lived off that for a little while. My stepdad got me a room at a hotel for about a month. And then when that ran out, I started getting really depressed, and I wanted to kill myself. And so it's whatever. And so I told my sister I was going to kill myself, and somebody called the police. Police came and got me, put me in Northwest. I was in Northwest for 2 months. And then the psychiatrist at Northwest kept saying this thing, and I don't know. He's like, hear me out, Clay. Mm-hmm. Maybe you need drug and alcohol treatment. And maybe it isn't all mental. Maybe some of this is created by, not saying that you don't have depression and anxiety, but just saying maybe some of this is coming as a result of your drug and alcohol use. And I was like, maybe we should start with some antidepressants. Mm-hmm. And he's like, we can do that too. But I don't think it's going to get better until you get sober. And he's like, I've talked to your dad, and he's got you a place at this treatment center in Little Rock if you're willing to go. And so I thought about it for about a week, and I was like, okay, I'll go. And I went. And that was in 2013. And I went to this treatment center.
How old were you at that time?
I was 24. 24. Or no, I was 23, about to turn 24. Mm-hmm. It was April, so my birthday's at the end of April, so I was about to turn 24. But something was said to me one day in treatment, and it was that statistic, look to your left, look to your right. More than likely, none of you are going to stay sober. 1 in 30 are going to stay sober. And I was like, for some reason, I was like, that's going to be me. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I was like, I want to be sober. I was like, I want to give this a fighting chance.
Was that the moment it kind of switched in your brain?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was. And I was like, you know what? I'm sick of having this, because I also had this little fleeting doubt that I was too young to get sober. Like, I just thought that sobriety was for once you turn like 40. I was like, or 50. Like, that's when you stop drinking. Like, but I was going to die or go to prison. Like, the things I was willing to do to drink and to use drugs were absolutely despicable. And, they were so risky. Like, I just was likely something bad would happen. Like, people don't just end up homeless from working a 9 to 5 and not smoking crack. You know what I mean?
So you had no legal trouble, though, up to that point? I
still have not had any legal trouble. I've had a speeding ticket, and that's about it. And I'm grateful for that, knock on wood. But and not to say that I'm not capable of having those things. I've just really been careful, and I've really been fortunate to have the support around me that I've had. If it wasn't for people like my mom, my dad, and my sister, I would probably be in prison. And, people can say what they want to say, but my sister's rescued me a million times. She's the reason that I'm still alive, my mom. But I wanted to be sober at that point. And I started working a program. I started doing things, and I stayed sober for a couple of years. And I started to really get a life back that was worth living.
What kept you going in those beginning days? Like, did you have any cravings or desires to use, or like sticky situations? Like, what motivated you during that time?
So something I'm really good about is staying busy. Like, I think if nothing else, stay busy, especially early off. And so I really did. I was going to meetings, staying active in fellowship. I was doing things, again, thank you for what you do. Like, as far as, adding fellowship as something different than just going to meetings and stuff. Cause I think that's so important, especially when you're young. You need that connection with people that are like-minded and like you. And, I needed that. And so I was constantly doing things. Like, when I wasn't at meetings, I was hanging out with sober friends. I wasn't putting myself, I had moved to Little Rock at that point. So I knew nobody except sober people. And so I was never really put in a position where it was exposed to me. But there were some times that, I felt not necessarily triggered, but I would feel urges or feelings of cravings or obsessions. And so when those would come up, I would acknowledge them. And then I would also kind of go back to looking at what were the preceding factors, like breadcrumb it. Like, where did this start? Like, what has caused me to feel this way? Or is it just like a fleeting thought? And, I can usually go back to like what had caused that feeling and change or in the future, I can go back and not do that to where, like, if I don't, this is just an example, but like, if I were to, yell at the cashier because she's shortchanged me or something like that, that's just going to lead to me being resentful, which could cause me to feel, like it could just totally fuck up my day. Which could go into my week, which could really get me twisted off. And so I really am really careful and aware and observant of the way I am, because I'm really neurotic sometimes. Like, it doesn't come out a whole lot because I am so aware of it. And I'm overly critical of myself sometimes, but I have to be, because that's like the most important thing, is like recognizing what causes me to pop, because those are the big things. It's like being frustrated, especially with myself. And then also, like, the other thing was that I stayed away from sexual relationships, romantic relationships. So and that, especially with how young I was, like, I was up to no good in the first place. And so it was the best thing. And so I really focused on myself and making myself better. And, sure enough, like, I was able to stay sober, and I did those things. Like, I did everything that was suggested of me, and I did it through 12 steps, but I also did things that were a little bit different.
What else did you do?
So my dad is a therapist, so I worked as a counselor for my dad. And that's something that's not normally recommended in the first year of any sobriety, because it's such a complex and dynamic situation to be in. I was working,
helping other people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And because not only do you not have that frame of reference, but you don't usually have that capacity to help people yet. Like, we all want to help people early in sobriety and recovery, but we really don't. I don't have that capacity to, like, really, how am I going to process this? I don't know that early in. And so once I got to about a year, my dad was like, why don't you think about becoming a drug and alcohol counselor and start seeing clients? And so I started working with young women. That was my main focus, was young women and parolees. And then moms that were at risk with DCFS involvement. And I really began loving helping people again. And I was really good at it. But that became my main source of my recovery, which is another reason why that people are like, be careful with that, because that can become, you have to be able to separate your sobriety or recovery from your career. Like, they're just not the same thing. Like, you can have, those can be parallels, but they aren't the exact same. And so, especially for me. And so my dad relapsed.
Oh, no.
Yeah, about 2 years sober. And he progressed really quickly. And he started getting DWIs again. He started getting arrested. And then one day, his business partner called me and said, can you go check on him? So I did. And he was dead.
Oh, my. I'm so sorry.
I appreciate that. And so I remember standing there, 2 years sober, calling my sister, calling my mom, calling my grandmother, and calling my grandfather to tell him that he had died. And I told my sister, and it was just, I mean, you could have killed me that day and it would have been easier than doing that. And it was just the worst day of my life. But I was in so much shock. Like, I didn't really understand that. Like, I'd known, because I'd been in therapy a lot of my life dealing with that stuff, but I'd never really dealt with something that close to home. And I remember the coroner coming in and nonchalantly just joking with the cops, which was really took the wind out of my sail and really hurt me.
That's very, very rude and unprofessional.
Yeah. And so it was just something that I had a really tough time dealing with. And then he came out with my dad in a body bag, and he was using him like a desk. And so, like, he just writing on his clipboard on top of him. Mm-hmm. And I was just blown away. I was like, how? Like, right in front of me. Like, not like he was trying to, and I understand he's trying to do his job, but I was just like, are you that, like, I understand that you're doing this job and that you're working, but like,
yeah, like, he's desensitized to it, but he's going to the point where he no longer is having compassion for the family.
And so that, and because I'm just dealing with this by myself. Yeah. The police are there. They don't care. They just think they have no idea that he's a social worker. He's just an old guy who lives in Section 8 housing, who's almost 70 years old, that smokes crack, and that's probably overdosed. They don't give a shit about any of the other stuff. And so he was just another drop in the bucket to them. And, like, that was something, he had a name, he had a huge purpose. And so, like, the people, he helped so many people. And so I was just so hurt that, like, they were just, taking, like, and treating him like a rock, basically, just a senseless object. And so I had a really hard time with that. Went home, did the funeral and everything like that. Really didn't deal well with that.
Was it triggering for you at all for, like, a desire to use?
So not really, but I also just kind of threw I started just having sex with women left and right, and, like, instead of using, and then, like, so screwed over a lot of my friends, like, started sleeping with friends and stuff like that, stuff that was just really goes against my values. I just didn't know, because I didn't want to use, but, like, I was just like, well, this is just as unhealthy, especially for me. And so I did that, and so March 17th, I was like, okay, today's the day. I was like, I'm going to die today. Like, I was just like, I can't do this anymore.
The suicidal feelings came back.
Yeah, but intense. So I was like, all right, I'm going to find a way to kill myself. I was like, I can't use. I was like, I have to kill myself. Like, I just can't. I was like, I can't go back to using again.
How long was this after your dad died?
Almost 2 months to the day. So this was on St. Patrick's Day. He had died on January 19th.
Were you getting any like mental health care or anything at the time, or are you just kind of...
No, and I was going through a breakup.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot going on, especially with how the cops and the coroner dealt with the situation. I can't even imagine what that felt like for you.
It was, like I just didn't have, like I wasn't doing anything for America, so I had nothing to fall back on.
Mm-hmm. Were you still, like, you mentioned earlier different things like keeping busy and like breadcrumbing your emotions back?
I had quit doing all of that.
Quit doing everything?
Yeah, so like I had my mental health hygiene went out the window. Like when my dad died, like I just couldn't, like I just wasn't willing to do the things that, like I was like a martyr almost. Like I was just like, I don't deserve those things. I wasn't sleeping good. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't eating good. I wasn't working well. And so I wasn't doing anything for myself. So that's when I got to that point. So I had an intentional overdose and nothing happened that day. And then on March 18th, I had a seizure at work. I fell. I fractured my skull. I had a brain bleed. Blew out my eardrum. I'm still deaf to this day from it.
What do you attribute the seizure to? Withdrawals?
From overdose.
Yeah.
I specifically took a ton of this one medication that's kind of known for causing seizures. And as soon as I woke up in the hospital, I was like, oh, you really did it now. And I was like, I was like, if I ever get the chance, I won't do it again. And so I was really screwed up physically, mentally, and emotionally. Like I didn't know if I was going to recover from this completely. And so I wake up, come to the ICU, and I can't hear. And I realize I'm deaf now. And
you couldn't hear anything?
I could hear a little bit out of my right ear, but my left ear is completely blown out. And so the ear, nose, and throat doctor's there, and he's like, yeah, you're deaf. And like, just again, like that whole lack of compassion, like they're just very quick with it. And so he was nice. They were all nice, but they just weren't really explaining anything to me. And I just had a head injury. And so I was really confused. Like, why is my sister, because I was in Little Rock, my sister's here, like, this is bad. And it took me almost like 3 years to get sober again after that.
You continued to use?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't get sober. And so then I got put on pain management because of that head injury. And so it wasn't like I was actively using, but I wasn't actively sober either.
Yeah. Were you taking them as directed?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, and then some, because if one's good, 1,000's better.
Right.
But
so when the doctor was like, I'm going to give you a prescription for blah, 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 did you have a moment where you were like, oh shit, I shouldn't get this?
Yeah. And I was like, I remember when he said it, I was like, and he told me how much he was going to give me and what he was going to give me. I was like, oh, that could kill me. And like, then he started adding on more. And I was like, oh no. And I had all those things that like, but I just didn't listen to them. And it took me up until now, like I've had those experiences where I know it's not the right thing for me, but I just want to push through it. And I just don't want to feel that fear or worry, because I know there's fear and worry going to come up again, because that's been like my best friend that's been with me since grade school, or since before grade school, since I was a baby. Like fear's always there for me. Yeah. And worry's always there.
Constant companion.
Yes. And, I remember, so this is actually last year. I just kept waking. It was Groundhog's Day last year. Like it wasn't that bad as far as I wasn't using or anything. I was just on maintenance medication, but I had no connection with anybody. I wasn't getting out of my house. I'd lost my job because I couldn't work really. Every day was the same. Nothing ever changed.
And you woke up on Groundhog's Day and it felt like Groundhog's Day.
Yeah. Every day felt the same.
Oh my goodness.
And I just couldn't live like that anymore. And I remember going to my sister and I was like, I need help. Like, I was just like, why not get help now? And so that was, last year. And so my dad's business partner actually owns a treatment center. His former business partner owns a treatment center. And I called him and I was like, will you help me get back on track? And he was like, yeah, be here in a few days. And I went and I haven't looked back since. And, that's how we've met. Mm-hmm. And, I used to think that my quality of sobriety revolved around my quantity of sobriety. And I look at like how my life is now and the freedom that I have emotionally, the ability to love openly, the ability to go like not worry about who I'm going to, none of that. Like I want to add good into the world, and that wasn't possible before.
Yeah, what changed? Does it feel different this time than the other times that you've been sober?
Oh, 100%. Like, I remember waking up, like, I think it was like right around New Year's Day, and it was like the first time in a long time I woke up and I had hope. And that's like my biggest like selling point for people. Like, even if you're not wanting to be sober or anything like that, is like, when was the last time you had hope? Mm-hmm. And when was the last time you really, like, you woke up and you really wanted to see the sunset at the end of the day? And like, that was just I stopped looking at my past as like all this shame. I started seeing it for, the river that cut through and became this like canyon of empathy and compassion, and just this really cool thing it had created instead of just this flash flood of hell. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that I've never really had before. And that's come with, probably a little maturity and age. But the other thing is seeing people, over the last, being an opiate addict, like over the last 10 years, I've seen a lot of people die.
Yeah.
And
fentanyl in the drug supply, everyone's kind of just been falling out.
It doesn't matter what you're addicted to anymore. Mm-hmm. It's all got it in it. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it a lot here recently. And, as men, we are afraid to talk about the way we feel and our trauma, and that is killing us. Mm-hmm. And it's killing other people too. People of all communities, all gender identity, all races. Like, we, are afraid to talk about these things because they're so taboo. And in reality, like, that's what I'm here today is like a lot of, I would be hard pressed to think that most people would guess that I'm just like a gutter junkie or a drunk. Yeah. Like, I just don't represent that anymore.
Yeah. And you're right that the silence and the stigmatization is a huge factor in what's killing us. And the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it, the more people are not going to feel like they're so alone. And the more people are going to be able to access resources and help. So it's super important to be able to talk about it. You're exactly right.
Yeah. And I think about things like, and I'm all for things 12-step based and smart and, recovery demystified now. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to have like this one route that not everything is going to work for everybody. Mm-hmm. But there are all these options now. And I'm not against harm reduction or anything like that. But the enemy is that loss of connection and that hiding away and that silencing.
Exactly.
Like, that is our biggest enemy. And so, like, I'm so proud when hearing Jake come on here. I've known Jake for many years, and I feel that it's not that I'm super excited to come on here and tell embarrassing stories, but what I am happy to do is hopefully be a help to somebody that is afraid or that is embarrassed or ashamed. Like, I've been all of those things. But I've been able to climb out of that hole and see it for what it is. And so
it's amazing now that you're expressing like the new feelings of like hope and excitement. Like when we're super deep in addiction, that stuff just sometimes it doesn't exist. Like you kind of forget what it feels like to be excited or hopeful. And after like long enough of being in recovery and taking care of yourself and like building your life back up again, when we get those feelings of hope and excitement, like it's just so precious. It's like life is meaningful again.
Oh yeah. Like I could think of like 1,000 things that are just so much better now. Like, you know, sleep is one of those things that I forgot how great it was. And it's something I don't take for granted now. But also the other thing is like food and that hope, but also like the people that are around me, like that. I think it's so important to say that like these people, I have this huge community of people around me that love me and that reach out to me constantly, that are just constantly giving me shit and just like I hadn't felt that in a long time. That like I've had that really deep connection again. And, you know, it's not like a romantic connection or anything like that, but just that connection with people where you can enjoy somebody's company, or you can enjoy spending time with listening to somebody else and not thinking about yourself.
And it's very healing for those of us that have that like social rejection from childhood to experience healthy connections as adults. Like it heals that little sad kid that's living inside of us.
Yeah,
still,
absolutely.
You know?
Like that dad size hole is now being filled up by like all these people who love me. Who, I mean, I hugged 3 dudes today at lunch, and like it's not a joke. It's not like, you know, like guys slapping each other on the butt. Good game. Like it's a genuine love for each other and wanting to see each other succeed and see each other happy, which is something that would be lost on me before. Yeah,
I'm so happy for you that you have that now. What other resources do you have in your recovery this time that make it feel different for you? So,
one big thing is I live in a really peaceful place, and I live with a bunch of sober guys. But I also have access to people that are sober constantly, which is really important to me. But the biggest things are going to be like that being able to bounce things off people, like that resource of person to person connection. Again, like I know it seems like a broken record, but like having that somebody sober so close to me, I can bounce my ridiculous ideas. Like, even if it's something stupid, like I want to build a hot air balloon out of chocolate, like they're going to be the ones that reel me back in and say, do you really think that's possible? And no, it's not. And, you know, just think about something that's possible. Like those things are really important for me, because especially when I was really early in sobriety, like I would have some really stupid ideas thinking they're great ideas. Like, like maybe I should go to this place and go meet this girl or whatever. You really think that's good? Like I started dating this girl early in sobriety and it wasn't good for me. And there's guys that said, hey man, not to be a jerk or anything, and not to say that you're a bad guy, but is this going to add to what you have going on? And at the time I was not ready to. And it wasn't that I wasn't ready to deal with being with a woman. It was that I wasn't ready to deal with the things that could come with that, like the pain, confusion, hurt. Was I going to be able to, and was I realistically going to be able to add anything to her life? And so, having that rapport with people, and then also, I spend a lot of time working around a treatment center. So I transport people to and from rehab sometimes. And so that's a really good way for me to, and not always for money. Like sometimes it's covered, but not always. And that's a way for me to give back. And that's like services. It's big in every program, I think, because it's so important for us to be able to help our fellow human.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why, like, you know, what you're doing is so great. but like I went and spoke at a health fair this week an alcohol awareness fair at the university. Mm-hmm. And I do things, I'm actively involved in my own recovery. And I really set down some guidelines. Like I didn't want to work for a few months. I really wanted to focus on my sobriety and my recovery. And I've continued that. Like if I don't focus on that, like everything else will fall by the wayside.
Yeah, and you have the data from your own life to prove that.
Scientific facts. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious, have you been able to address that core wound in your childhood of that fear, and how do you relate to fear nowadays?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the fear thing is something that I just really respect now. It's not gone, but I don't let it control my life. Like that's one of, you might call it like a character defect or whatever you want to call it. But the thing that I do is that I address the things around it, and I really focus on those leading events and those preceding events. And I try to really manage my fear and do things that are going to keep me out of being in like a really high fear state. But one of the big things that I do to manage my fears, I don't go into situations which are going to be dangerous for that without somebody else. So I've got a buddy who I'm really close with, and he does a lot of things with me. And I'm not embarrassed to do that either. Like it's something that I have to do sometimes. I am not willing to put myself in positions that are going to make me feel uncomfortable or in danger. Like that danger is just like fear. It's totally subjective and based off perception. And so I try just to avoid, or preparing myself for it. Like as long as I'm ready for battle, like it that goes into sobriety as well. Like if I have good armor, it's really a lot better than going in just fighting. If I'm prepared for battle, it's a lot better than just trying to fight it head on. Yeah,
that makes sense. So the fear is still there, but you've found healthy ways to live with it and survive it instead of just suppressing it. I'm curious if you think there's something that people don't understand about addiction.
I think there's a couple things. I think first off, that stigma that we're not bad people. I think that's one of the biggest things that really needs to, your mom might be an addict, your sister might be an addict, your teacher that you love. So like you don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it looks like. That's like a big thing that people don't understand. But the other thing is that, I think people don't understand is it's not a willpower thing. It has nothing to do with willpower. It has nothing to do with strength. There are just certain things that have led me to this point that were just a little bit differently. Maybe I should have gone down road A when I went down road B. Maybe I should have stopped here. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. Mm-hmm. And I can't go back and fix that now. So if you know somebody that you think is struggling, have some compassion, just try to put yourself in their position. Because I always thought that I would never be that person until I was. I just never really had addictive tendencies until I did.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think now, I know a lot of people that got hooked on pain pills during the opioid epidemic that otherwise probably would not be drug addicts. It just is not. It does not care who you are. It does not care how much money you have, how good of a person you are, how pretty your hair is, what tattoos you have, how good your CrossFit group is. Like, it just doesn't matter. And so I think that's like the big thing, and that it affects everybody differently.
And some people are hiding it and we don't really know what's going on with them. So I love that thought that you have of extending compassion to people.
Yeah. Like, I think that's one of my best, one of my biggest virtues, especially myself, is that, this pain has also given me the ability to feel it for others. And so, like, I think that's a really important thing that we don't forget is, like, instead of judging people, why not consider it just like cancer? Like, you wouldn't go up and call your cancer-ridden grandmother an idiot. Treat her like shit. Like, have some compassion for those that are suffering from this as well.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's like treating someone poorly isn't going to often motivate them towards finding recovery. It's just going to alienate them and push them away.
Another scientific fact.
If you could speak to someone who's deep in their addiction, who's suffering like quite deeply, what would you say to them?
First off, I love you. I've been there. There is help if you want it. But you don't have to do this alone.
That's right. Yeah, there's always people out there that are willing to extend a helping hand to pick you up, even when it feels like nobody's there. If you show up to any of these different variety of support groups that are available in society, you will find a group of smiling faces and people that are all ready to help you.
Yeah, and I think that, speaking on the Recovery Demystified thing, I highly encourage people to come check it out. It's really unique and different. Come at it with an open mind. If you think that you hate other programs, maybe this might be the one for you. Maybe not. I don't know. But it is different. And I think that you kind of hit it right there on the head. Like, wherever you decide to go, there is going to be somebody in there that will welcome you with open arms.
That's exactly right. Well, thanks for talking to me today. I appreciate your time so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Recovery Demystified is produced and edited by me, Early Brunner. Stevie Petet made our logo. Our social media manager is Kaylee Bausch. Logan Bragg wrote our beautiful theme music. We are entirely supported by donations as a 501c3 nonprofit. Your tax-deductible donations can be made to our Venmo or to our PayPal at Recovery Demystified. May you be happy and free, dear listener.